Finding a doctor are slim.
We know that the Affordable Care Act plans don't come with as robust network coverage. They aren't accepted by as many providers. And I would say, the majority of people who have new insurance coverage because of the Affordable Care Act were actually enrolled through Medicaid rather than through one of the private plans at $89 a month.
Regardless, Manning points out that people were told to enroll or face a tax penalty for going without health coverage of some sort. I'm Chris Woodward.
Former First Lady Barbara Bush is being remembered today following her death. Tanya J. Powers has more.
Tributes are coming in from around the world for former First Lady Barbara Bush, who passed away yesterday at age 92. She's being remembered as plain-spoken, compassionate, and funny. Author and First Lady's expert Andrew Oak says her greatest legacy may be that of the role of Bush family matriarch.
When times are tough and when the chips are down, she's the one that stands up and says, okay, come on, let's go.
Mrs. Bush will lie in repose Friday at St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston for members of the public who want to pay respects. The funeral, which is invitation only, is planned for Saturday. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
And finally, procrastinators have an extra day to file their taxes.
The IRS is giving taxpayers a one-day extension after the agency's direct pay website crashed yesterday. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin described the problem as a high-volume technical issue. The IRS has apologized for the inconvenience to taxpayers and says the crash is not believed to be a cyber attack. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
The church has to take the lead in ensuring that men are properly trained for fatherhood. We have an epidemic in which boys are not growing up with their fathers. So as Christian men, we have to stand in the gap and make up the hedge so that our communities are not destroyed. When we see fatherhood as a blessing and not an inconvenience, we will see children as spiritual weapons in our arsenal. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Help us to continue the ministry of Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk. Please call now with your pledge of support. Call 800-326-4543, option 2. Pledge $20 a month or more, and we'll send you an Urban Family Talk t-shirt. Then you can be a walking billboard to help others find our station and the love of Christ with Urban Family Talk. That number again, 800-326-4543, option 2. And thank you for listening to Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
It's very private, and I'm a huge believer in a loving God. I pray, George and I pray every night out loud, and sometimes we fight over whose turn it is, but we do. And I have no fear of death, which is a huge comfort because we're getting darn close. And I don't have a fear of death for my precious George or for myself, because I know that there is a great God, and I'm not worried about that.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right, everybody, here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. It is Share-a-thon, and we are so excited about being with you on a week where we get to ask for your partnership, and we get to accept that. And we have had a great day yesterday, and we're looking for more. If you listen to this show, if you listen to Urban Family Talk and you love it, if you feel like the Lord has blessed you through what we do here on the air, and if you use the information to inform and equip yourself and to kind of just get things going to rev you up, please consider partnering with us. We're looking for partners who are going to do a $20 a month commitment to the ministry. And that would be so fantastic. A gift of any amount, of any frequency is always welcome, but we would love to see people sign on for that $20 a month. That's less than a cup of coffee per day, way less than a cup of coffee per day, especially if you're one of those Starbucks people. No judging. And so we'd love to see you do that with us. The number to get that started is 800-326-4543, or you can do it the easy way, 1-800-FAMILIES. And then click option 2 and you'll be taken right to where you need to go. It's quick, it's painless, it's easy, and it sets us up to do more. We want to do more with Urban Family Talk, and Share-a-thon happens twice a year. And so this is the only time you hear us asking you for this kind of assistance, for this kind of partnership. And so work with us here. We'd love to have you helping us, and we would be so grateful for that. 1-800-FAMILIES, option 2. So today on the show, we have Barbara Bush leaving behind the legacy of an admirable woman. And she talks about not being afraid to die. I listened to a few clips of her recent interviews and conversations that she had. And the woman, I obviously differed with her on her late flip to supporting Hillary Clinton in the last election. But this isn't about that. An entire life, a marriage of over 70 years, a woman who married the first man she ever kissed, who happens to be George Bush, the senior. And she's not just the wife of a president, but mother of a president. There had to have been something that she did a little differently. And so, of course, obviously this was her calling, but God calls those who are prepared and those who he knows will do his will. And so it's an amazing life story, and it's wonderful to have the ability to commemorate it. We don't have to, obviously we're sad that she's passed on, but we don't have to be ultimately sad for her because we know she's gone on to be with the Lord, and we're excited about that because that is our future as well. So we have that. And we also have Tiffany Gabbay. She's the host of Culture Wars on the Rebel TV, and she's going to join us to talk about San Diego County actually backing Donald Trump. So here on this program, we've said many, many times that it just appears to be that California is completely liberal. There are no sane parts left. But apparently, we're wrong. Now, obviously, we've had callers call in and say, hey, I'm listening from California, and we really appreciate your ears and the fact that you're there fighting the good fight. But this is an entire city, one of the largest cities in the state of California, that's saying, no, we don't agree with you on sanctuary cities. So we're going to talk about that. She's going to come on and bring us the update on that. We're going to talk about Wisconsin Supreme Court agreeing to hear McAdams v. Marquette University. Interesting, because the story is so benign. Once I share it with you, you're going to be thinking, that's why they fired the guy? Yeah. But when it comes to being a conservative, you really don't have to do much for them to be like, keek, keek, see ya. So then in hour 2, we have Curtis Houck. He's the managing editor for MRC, and he's going to talk about CNN, talking about the so-called P-tapes, these fake tapes. It's basically innuendo that's been spoken into truth. And they've talked about it 77 times over the past 5 days. 77 times. Like there's no other news. And then, of course, we're going to round out the show with a discussion about whether or not homosexual sex is a perversion. Why are we talking about that? Because Cory Booker actually rudely grilled and tried to verbally assault. He verbally assaulted Mike Pompeo over this very subject. Okay, so we have a replacement for Tiffany. We're going to have John Cardillo in the place of Tiffany. Apparently, there's a little bit of a replacement going on there, so that's fine. We can roll with it. Live radio, we can roll with the punches. So it's been a kind of interesting past 24 hours because in between the weird Comey revelations, because they just keep coming, the hits keep on coming. They're not the most outstanding hits. They're not the hits that knock you back in your chair where you're like, whew, what have I seen? But they are the kind of hits where you kind of think to yourself, who are you really? And why do you expect us to believe you on any of it? So right now, I want to talk about the assurance that we've heard. And I'm going to post a couple of the videos that I saw of Barbara Bush talking about her faith, talking about not being afraid to die. I'm going to post a couple of those up on the Stacey on the Right Show page, and you can watch them. And the reason why I encourage you to watch them is because as I get older, I notice when I meet people, the older they are, the more open they are about their faith. And I don't know if it's because they feel they have less to lose, or because they feel more bold, or because they genuinely don't care what other people think, or because they care more. I don't know. But older people tend to be more outwardly open with their faith. In fact, if you look at Kathy Lee Gifford's, the turn she's made after her husband passed away, she's just been so open about her love of Jesus Christ. And, you know, I think she was always a Christian, but it's been so obvious lately. And it's been interesting to watch. And so here you have Barbara Bush talking about dying, talking about how she's not afraid of it. She's not afraid to die. And that's because she knows that she serves a great God, that there's a great God who waits for her on the other side of this life. And I just think it's it's fascinating to me. I have a never-ending fascination with hearing other people who are so calmly assured of their faith. And I know, for me, it's kind of like fist on the table. I'm like rage kitty for Jesus. I'm into it. But there's something different about the way older people discuss how they know God is waiting for them. They know they're going on to be with the Lord. And so when she was talking about that, I thought, well, I have the assurance of my salvation through Jesus Christ. But what an amazing testimony it is coming from her, the way she speaks about it. So the verse that I want to share with you today is 2 Timothy 1, verse 12. For this reason, I also suffer these things, but I am not ashamed. For I know whom I have believed, and I am convinced that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him until that day. And so we're entrusting our lives to him, and God is more than able to guard our lives and our hearts until that day, which is the day that we go on from this life to the next, and we get to meet him face to face and experience the true reward of a life lived for Jesus Christ. And so there was I stumbled across another kind of a discussion kind of online about, it's another host here on this radio show. He's or on this station, Daryl Harrison. He's got, I think, a weekly podcast that's either started or it's about to start up. And he wrote an article on justthinking.me. I shared it on Twitter, and I believe I shared it on Facebook as well. I recommend you read it. It's all about racial reconciliation and how really there can be none because there is no such thing as race. And so the terms that we use, racism, race, these things don't actually denote a quantifiable phenomenon. It's really enmity within one man to another or groups of men to other groups of men. And he talks about how when we have enmity within us, we have the active, intentional enmity. We're enemies on purpose to someone else, which it manifests itself in something that we in this culture call racism, that is enmity towards God as well. So if we find ourselves hating another person or group of persons, that hatred is also what we feel towards God. Now, that is a really tough thing to take because I think it's safe to say that many people who have someone that they hate also feel that they love God. But the Bible says, how can you love me when you've never seen me, but you can't love your fellow man who you can see? Now, this is some of the toughest that we have to deal with because people are fallen and they're flawed and they're going to do things that we don't like. They're going to hurt us. They're going to break our trust. They're going to attack. There are even people who will intentionally try to do more than those things I just listed. They'll go as far as they can to try to snuff you out or snuff out your possibilities or your options or your opportunities. And so knowing that, God still tells us that our place to operate from is love. And when we have racism, it's that person needs to be reconciled to Jesus Christ. And so there is no government program that can do that. There is no movement that can do that. There's no, sit-ins and things like that aren't going to do it. Now, of course, we should have proper ramifications within the work environments and places like that. And our public policy should not reward people who practice enmity towards their brothers and sisters. But the idea that somehow, especially in the Black church, where so many Black churches have moved to liberation theology, and the majority of what they preach is about fighting back against racism, what we have to do is acknowledge that we need a savior. And contrary to what has been parroted about in Twitter, our savior is not Barack Obama. It's not Donald Trump. Our savior is Jesus Christ. So we want to have the assurance that Barbara Bush talked about so many times in her life and being a public figure, wife of a president, mother of a president, philanthropist, volunteer, and political activist, running campaigns, all the different things that she did, the hats she wore, grandmother, mother, all of those things. We have to really, really also remember that that assurance that she held so quietly and publicly within herself comes from knowing Jesus Christ And the only way to have it for ourselves is for us to know him too. So that's the encouragement for today. And I think we're going to have to push this piece of audio back because I have some from Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, and he is on fire about what they're doing in their state to take care of the border, what they can do as a state to help out the federal government whose purview immigration falls under. So they're going to be working on that. We're actually going to listen to that, maybe coming in from the next break, or we might save it to the third segment. I want to give you this little smidgen of information. So we talked about the polls that show that the enthusiasm for the Democrats is not as strong as it was in January, and that this impending blue wave is a possibility. It is not an assurance. Well, another poll is out showing that Americans now prefer the Republicans over the Democrats on taxes, but the tax bill itself remains unpopular. So they're saying that Republicans are better equipped than Democrats to handle the economy and taxes. According to a new survey, 35% of the respondents of an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll said they prefer the GOP to handle the economy, while 28% said they prefer the Democrats. When the same question was asked in a December poll, the Democrats were leading by 5 points. So you see how things can change? And as our guest yesterday, Chris, was talking about, between now and November, politically, it's an eternity because so many things can change. And so it's not the time to get down in the doldrums. And as we watch these Republicans who are retiring, leaving office, et cetera, and they are giving their many different reasons, I just want to remind people that none of these things are accidents. So we know that all things work together for those who are called according to God's purpose, for the good of those who are called according to God's purpose, and nothing has changed. So as we say goodbye to these sometimes lifelong legislators, we can look forward to new people coming in and taking their place, and we can pray for them that they would actually go to D.C. and represent the consent of the governed and be more godly in their legislative actions. It's an opportunity. All right, that's the music. When we get back, we'll have our guest for you. Stay right there.
Did you know George Washington, the father of our country, he loved being at home at Mount Vernon. In fact, he said he'd rather be at home at Mount Vernon than dining with all the princes and royalty of Europe. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We're going to Mount Vernon on our Spiritual Heritage Tour in September, and we'd love to have you join us for this very special time. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be with us as we go all over our nation's capital. We'll go to the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the World War II Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, all the places you want to see in our nation's capital. We'll see that, but we'll also go to Mount Vernon. Now, for all the information on this September tour, including a side trip to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, you can check it out at spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com for all the information on our September tours. And we'll see you then.
Hi, I'm Crawford Ridge with a Legacy Moment. Have you ever been around somebody and wondered, does this person ever have fun? I mean, they're so uptight. Well, there are times in which you just have to let loose, have a little fun, lighten up. It isn't all that serious. In 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 16 through 22, David was rejoicing because the ark of God, representing the very presence of God, was coming to Jerusalem. Then it happened, as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, that Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. As you may know, she confronted him later about it. Now, verse 21. So David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore I will celebrate before the Lord, and I will be more lightly esteemed than this, and will be humble in my own eyes." There are some observations I want to make concerning David's uninhibited rejoicing. Number one, it was a source of embarrassment for those who were more dignified. Number two, he was overcome by God's favor and blessing. When you think about the goodness of God, proper decorum is not necessarily your top priority. Then number 3, it was a statement of humility. He said, I will not only be lightly esteemed in front of everybody else, but in my own eyes, because God is to be glorified and praised. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. No, I'm not suggesting that we become disruptive and out of control, but what I am saying is that what God has done for you is far more important than what people think about you.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the program. Please call in and partner with us on our share-a-thon, which is ending tomorrow. So we're depending on you, we're relying on you to call in and donate to the share-a-thon. The SAP pledge is what we're asking for this go round. It's $20 a month. It's a pledge, it's a commitment to partner with us. And you're not really giving anything up. You're just supporting fantastic Christian relevant radio, the place where you can get all your information and you can have the wide variety of fantastic hosts all day long. So 800 Families option 2, 1-800-FAMILIES option 2. Not sure why Bentley's running around barking, but please forgive him. All right, now it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. It's John Cardillo. He's the host of the John Cardillo Show, Newsmax TV political commentator, and he's coming on for Tiffany Gabbay. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, no problem. Glad to be here.
Okay, so we're talking about this San Diego County backing Trump on the sanctuary cities actions. What's going on?
Well, Southern California, Stacey, has always been more Republican, had a much more robust and active Republican presence than many of the other areas we think of in California, most notably Los Angeles, San Francisco. This is just people who live in San Diego County, which is a border county, sick and tired of seeing the effects of criminal illegals. They've been inundated with human trafficking. San Diego is one of the worst cities in the world right now for the intake of human traffic victims for illegal narcotics. They found a tunnel, law enforcement found a tunnel not long ago that was part of El Chapo's network, the Sinaloa cartel. It originated about 3 miles south of our border in Tijuana, and it came up into an office park in San Diego. This particular tunnel was so sophisticated, it had an industrial elevator that could have held 8 men and tons of cocaine. Well, you can also hold a lot of weapons. You can hold ISIS fighters, Al-Qaeda fighters. And 3 people on the San Diego County Commission voted. The vote was 3-1 in favor of joining the Trump administration in the sanctuary lawsuit, the lawsuit against sanctuary cities.
Okay, so I'm fantastically excited about seeing them do that because the reputation of California is that everyone there is enjoying the liberalism. They drink from the cup daily, and they're really excited about all of the future being even more liberal than it is now. But the fact is, to have a city the size of San Diego voting to join the Trump administration court challenge to the California law, I mean, this is huge news. It should be on MSNBC, CNN. It should be everywhere.
It was the county that did it. So it wasn't the city of San Diego proper. It's the county. So in a geographic sense, even larger. And, what you learn about California when you analyze it politically is that the coastal areas, we love that term coastal elites, right? I use it on my show all the time. And it really rings true. When you start to move a little bit east into California, the more rural areas, people are conservative. The sheriffs are pro-Second Amendment. It's very easy to get concealed carry of a firearm in those counties. The sheriffs are amenable to that. They issue it very quickly. And so the problem California has, much like New York, is that the population centers, New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco, are the ones that are institutionally blue, Democrat, liberal. So as they go, goes the rest of the state. It's really an unfortunate situation.
It is. And so, and we haven't really talked about it on the show. It's a topic I want to get to this week after I get to read up more about it. But apparently there's a proposal to split, and I don't know if it was Tucker Carlson or who, to split California into 3 different states so that the libs can have their utopia on their own. Have you seen anything about that? Did you see that segment?
Yeah, I saw the segment. I've seen the maps. And interestingly enough, I just wrapped my Newsmax show, and we had a caller from California who was talking about exactly that they were an advocate of of this split into 2 or 3 states. Look, I can't blame people in California. If you live in San Bernardino County, one of the more rural farming and ranching counties, these are conservative, God-fearing, red-blooded Americans who respect their Second Amendment. They love their Second Amendment rights. They don't want to be governed by people selected in Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco. They don't want the state to be institutionally blue with the furthest left, immoral type of governance that California is seeing. And they realize that Governor Jerry Brown is being disingenuous when he says he wants to protect people. But we know that when the Oakland mayor, Libby Schaaf, warned illegals about ICE raids, many, many criminals escaped. Of the 232 people, Stacey, that ICE caught, half of them had criminal records. And I mean for violent things, narcotics trafficking, weapons trafficking, robbery, rape, kidnapping. These were bad guys. So how many illegal criminals got away? This is what Californians are finally getting sick of.
Yeah, I think it's the death and mayhem. If people weren't actually getting killed and raped and, all that good stuff, people could probably just absorb the extra high taxation and put up with it because they love Californian weather. But it's actual human beings who are being killed by illegal aliens, drunk driving, but it's also the intentional assaults and the robberies and everything. It kind of makes you wonder why liberals aren't more concerned for their own safety.
Well, the ones that control the political process live in gated, wealthy communities with small local police departments that rush there to protect them. They have their own armed security that they pay. I mean, if people ever saw the homes that Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein live in, it would make their heads spin. These are mansions. These are bona fide mansions worth double-digit millions of dollars. And so when you live that kind of elite lifestyle, you're completely out of touch with the people who are the victims of crime.
So at this point, what is I know none of us has a crystal ball. We can't predict anything, but what's the opportunity for this, for the Trump administration and these other counties and cities that have joined in? What's the chance of them actually winning this thing?
Well, look, if judicial activism, if far left judicial activism wasn't a thing, we would prevail. It's pretty clear. I mean, I began my career in law enforcement. That's how I built my media brand. And it's always been common knowledge that the federal government has authority over certain things, immigration being one of those things. Immigration is a function of the federal government. Enforcement of it is a mission of the federal government. It's ludicrous that these local cities won't comply with federal law. It's ludicrous that they won't allow the local law enforcement agencies to cooperate with the feds. We've always had task forces. We have DEA task forces on narcotic, joint terrorism task forces with the FBI, with the ATF for gun trafficking. And so I think that if we have honest judges who rule on law and precedent, the Trump administration will prevail, but I don't have a lot of faith in the federal judiciary these days.
Neither do I. So we've seen some of the protests. The ones that are usually covered on the news media are really, it's all pro-left. It's all, here are these wonderful dreamers. Here are these wonderful refugees, whatever. They're protesting. They want to be here. They have a right to be here. You're homophobic, bigoted, misogynist, xenophobic, afraid of different kinds of people, whatever. But there have been some protests on the other side, people who want the rule of law to prevail. And so are we going to see more of that in support of this action? People kind of taking some activism and grabbing it with both hands to try to protest and let people know, hey, we're out here too?
Well, we see it on the left because these are organized protests paid for by groups backed by people like George Soros financially and some others. We see it on the right. On the right, it's more organic. It's just everyday Americans who are fed up when they see a Kate Steinle shot and killed by an illegal alien or a law enforcement officer killed by an illegal. And so I do think we'll see more of these on the right. My fear is we're not going to see them as well-funded and well-organized and as robust as they are on the left, because those are incredibly well-funded efforts by radical billionaires. Yeah,
Soros, he pumped, millions of dollars into the little town 20 minutes away from me here in St. Louis, into Ferguson, to put those protests on. We only found out about it later, but he was the one who paid for the tents, the signs, the bottled water, all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure was. We did a pretty in-depth expose on that a couple of years back, and it was tragic, but he's still up to it, and he's a major force behind a lot of the unrest we're seeing today, behind the Antifa movement, behind groups like La Raza and the illegal alien front groups, Pueblos Sin Fronteras, that group that was forming the caravan to come up to the U.S. And so I don't think he's going to stop anytime soon, because bringing in illegals to the U.S. and legalizing them is the perfect vote scheme for Democrats.
Wow. Well, I think I'm really glad that you guys are on top of it. And I didn't give all of the different things. I just went there. The rebel.media is your television empire. You've got the radio show and so much other cool stuff. So tell us where we can find you, reach out to you after the show and all that good stuff if people want to find you.
I'm pretty active on Twitter at John Cardillo on Twitter. Yeah, I do a Rebel show, and I also do a 3-hour Newsmax show every day now from noon to 3.
Ah, awesome. Perfect. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I love Newsmax. I used to go on there all the time. And so good luck with that.
I got to have you back.
Yeah. I'm not sure what I've been doing except, running around like a chicken with my head cut off with this senior who's graduating.
I'm with our buddies, Cam and Company over at NRA News. We always cross paths there as well.
Yes. We're often on the same day over at Cam and Company. Great guys. That's my NRA fam over there. So I can't say no to them. But yeah, I'd love to join you over at Newsmax and talk about some issues. And I'd love to also have you back on here to talk some more. Thank you so much for being on today. John Cardillo Cardillo on Twitter, and the rebel.media online for the TV side. And what else?
And Newsmax.
And Newsmax.
On television in the afternoon.
Newsmax TV in the afternoon. He's a busy guy. He's killing it. All right. So thanks, John, so much for coming on today.
Take care, Stacey. Great talking to you.
Talk to you again soon. Yeah. So I'm flabbergasted, because it seems to me like no matter what your political ideology, that it wouldn't even why is this even a story that we have to actually unpack and talk about here on the show? That San Diego County, I'm so glad he corrected me on that. It's not San Diego City, it's San Diego County, which is even more people. They're all basically saying, look, we don't agree with this. We don't want people who are criminally active, criminal illegal aliens, given the same rights as law-abiding citizens. And we don't have any reason to hide that. We don't believe in it. And so they're joining together with the Trump administration. The problem is, as John explained, they have a really activist circuit court that hears the cases first there. And so you have to get past the 99th to get to the Supreme Court. And even the Supreme Court has been a little weird. Their action yesterday in basically saying that a vaguely worded bill about deporting people who have done violent criminal actions, it's too vaguely worded, therefore it's unconstitutional. And they're cited against the Trump administration, who, honestly, Trump administration is trying to protect Americans, trying to keep Americans safe. So that's why it's so important. And we now do have time to listen to this. I want you guys to hear Dan Patrick of Texas. And he's talking about the Democrats in the state of Texas who want to defy but can't, because they're having none of it down in Texas. What he can do to the Democrats who want to defy the will of the leadership there, Governor Abbott, and also the law. Because I think sometimes people get confused and they think that because President Trump wants to end illegal immigration, that somehow it's some personal thing he's got going on. It's the law of the land. Whether he wants it or not, whether Obama wanted it or not, it was still the law. So let's listen to number 2.
Well, let's just look at the facts. I hear Democrats and liberals on Fox all the time and other networks decrying that there are no crimes committed by illegal immigrants. Number one, in Texas only, in the last 7 years, we've put in our jails over 245,000 criminal aliens. These are the facts. We've charged them with over 650,000 crimes, either current or on their rap sheet. We have convictions for 566 murders, 274 kidnappings. And when President Trump talks about rape in Texas in the last 7 years, 3,244 sexual assaults. Join that with 40,000 other assaults, 40,000 drug crimes, thousands of gun crimes, and thousands of gang members like MS-13 in this country committing crimes. When I hear the mayor of Berkeley say sanctuary cities make us safer, it is nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Okay, he just killed it just then. Did you hear what he said? Well over 3,000 rapes. Can you even, And so you might say, well, Stacey, Texas is huge. They have a huge population in Texas. It's multiple millions of people. So what? So what if it's millions and millions of people? 3,000 rapes is way too many. Even one is too many. But at least if you get it down into the single digits, you can kind of be, you can feel within your heart of hearts that you're actually working hard to put a stop to it. You can say, we'll do better next year. We'll try to stop even that one or two incidences, but thousands and thousands of rapes, not to mention the robberies, assaults, the battery. And we're not talking about just grown women who are being raped, as if that makes it okay. We're talking about children as well, little girls, toddlers. How can anyone say, well, and what I usually get back when I talk about this is if I can get a word in edgewise, because, being rude seems to be the total thing right now. Well, white people rape people too. Black people rape people too. So in other words, because some people who are citizens do these things, it's okay to let people who are here illegally do these things. It's wrong on all counts. So it's never okay to do that. But it is worse when someone shouldn't have had the opportunity to do it. How do you reconcile that with the victim? You could have been safe had we simply cooperated with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, but since we did not, that's what happened to you. But we still need our sanctuary city because that's what makes us safe. Do you feel safe? Well, I don't actually care because I'm a liberal. That should not be allowed. So I love Dan Patrick's passion there. We'll hear more from him when we get back from this brief commercial break. Stay there. Stacey on the Right.
Physical activity is the new trend. It's not a bad thing unless it has brought a sense of vanity in your life. 2 years ago, I was not happy with the number on the scale nor how I looked. I've never been a huge person, but I was, as the old folks would say, healthy. I joined a gym, gained a personal trainer, even changed some of my eating habits. The Lord checked me one day and in my spirit said, "Why are you disgusted with yourself? Be healthy, take care of the temple I've loaned you, but do it because you want to honor this body, which is your responsibility while on this earth." I said, "You better let me know, Abba." Psalms 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." 15 pounds down, I know that even if I was to never look like Serena Williams with those nice framed, worked out arms, I am wonderfully made in his image, and so are you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Target continues to allow men into their women's restroom and changing areas. Will 2018 be the year Target reverses this dangerous and reckless policy? Protect your family. Don't shop at Target. Sign the boycott pledge at afa.net. The American Family Association will continue to work toward the goal of convincing Target to reverse its misguided policy that places women and children at risk. Sign the boycott pledge at afa.net. That's afa.net.
Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We just got back from Southeast Houston. We were there from March 10th to March 24th. We did our first ever back-to-back trips. That's right, 8 Days of Hope 14 and 15. Saw 4,692 volunteers come from all over the country. In fact, from all over the world. And God allowed us to help 844 families rebuild their homes. Some got brand new roofs. Some picked out brand new kitchen sets. We put flooring in, insulation, drywall. It wasn't just the rebuilding work that was done, because about $10.4 million of work was done for free, but it was the lives that were impacted for Jesus. We had volunteers and homeowners alike fall on their knees and say yes to our Father in heaven. Thank you so much. And that's why we do 8 Days of Hope. Hey, if you're interested in being part of 8 Days of Hope, just go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, click on Get Involved, submit your email address, and we'll contact you anytime we go anywhere to love and serve those in need.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
In Texas, we passed Senate Bill 4 last February, early in our session, and it's been upheld by the courts. We now give the power to police if they want to ask where you're coming from and ask to see your documents. You can do it in Texas. Secondly, if Jerry Brown tried to pull a stunt like he's doing in California, which I think is total anarchy, he's not upholding his oath. Look, the oath that Jerry Brown took is the same thing that I took or Governor Abbott took, except the state changes the name.
Right.
But we swear an oath to our Constitution and to uphold the laws of the country and our state, and Jerry Brown is not doing it. But in Texas, if any of our Democrats defy working with ICE, we, number one, can fine their cities. We can arrest those elected officials. We can even run them out of office. We're not putting up with this nonsense in Texas. And America's with the president. America's with Texas. That's why everyone wants to move to Texas.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. You know what's fun? Listening to that guy talk about how that's why everybody wants to move to Texas. He's right. All of us do want to move to Texas. I was born in Texas. You guys know I'm Texas proud, but I kind of want to live there again. And as much as you guys know, we really like living in the suburbs of St. Louis. And it's kind of weird because I think the reputation of St. Louis, even before Ferguson, was that we have this horrible crime-ridden place, when the reality is it's a few individual streets in the city of St. Louis proper that drive the crime rate. And that's mainly driven by illegal immigration and gang activity. And so if you're not in those areas, it's a pretty nice place to live. And the cost of living is primo. Now, our taxation is not super low, but it's also not super high for the state tax side. So, you get to complaining a little bit about the fees and the taxes on purchasing a car. But how often do you need to purchase a car? It's not something you're doing every year. So you get to kind of minimize the damage on that. And so it's sad to say because Missouri is so nice, but Texas is where it's at. I'm sorry, that it's just the truth. Texas is the new thing. Texas is the new black, as the youth like to say, or maybe it's the millennials. I don't know. And so when we look at what they're putting down and what's drawing people there, it's the economic opportunity, the lack of high taxation, the freedom, no property taxes, and it's Texas. I mean, the gas station there, it's called Buc-ee's. Y'all have to look at my Instagram account. You'll have to scroll down a little bit to see we were in Texas for spring break, not this year, but last year. And we ended up going there because there was a blizzard in New York. And so we just put a hold on the tickets and drove to Galveston instead. And there were no places available in our normal spot, which is Destin. So we went down to Galveston. Now, most people I know, especially my snooty friends, I love y'all. I love my snooty friends, but they were like, Galveston? Oh, why would you? We had so much fun. I can't even begin to. I did tell you guys. I can begin to tell you how much fun we had. We had a blast in Galveston. Now the beach is horrifying. Like it's the sand is not primo. They have some kind of water movement system that's a big, huge pipe that's like almost big enough to drive a golf cart through, and it runs above the ground on top all over. Like it's just, you can't get anywhere on the beach without seeing that thing. But in addition to going to the beach, which we did actually not as much of as we normally would, we went all over the little town, and it was so cool. The town was so cool. And then on the way out, of course, we drove through Dallas. We didn't even stop, which I feel bad because I'm not Dallas, Houston. We drove through Houston, which we have good friend of Stacy on the Right show, Sam Malone, who we didn't stop by. We didn't say hi, which is totally like bad form. But it was the five of us, and my husband was in driver mode. You know how it is when you're driving and you have 12 hours to go? The person who's starting out the first leg is like driver mania, where they can't stop. No one uses the bathroom. No one even looks out the window and says, ooh, look at that. You have to go, you have to get on the road. You have to get going. So that's what we were doing, but we had to stop for gas to gas up the minivan. And we stopped at this Buc-ee's. And I am not kidding you. It was something else. First of all, the Buc-ee's is like a mini Sam's Club, but with lots of gifts. It had a huge gift section. It was so big, I felt the need to purchase gifts for like birthdays and stuff that were happening later on in the year, because I was like, what? Look at all these gifts. I have to take advantage of it. And there's food, hot cooked food in there. It's like 5 restaurants, and then all this handmade beef jerky and all this taffy, like pulled taffy. It was just insane. And so those are only in Texas. It's a family owned business, and they only have them in Texas. So we can't get any of that here in Missouri. I wish we could, because wouldn't it be great to go to Buc-ee's to get gas whenever you needed gas? For those of you who live in Texas who listen to the show, big ups to Buc-ee's. That's awesome. So the point is that Texas it's everything right now. Like, people want to live there. I often see on Facebook and other social media where people will say, I'm hopeful that the people who move here aren't wanting to turn it into the place that they left, which is what we human beings like to do. We love to complain, and I hate that. Then we go to the next place and we're like, I got to vote for it because this place, they don't have any rules about this. They don't have any rules about that. We need some rules about that. And then once you voted and made it just like the other place that you hated, you're like, oh, everything's just gone downhill. You made it go downhill. You decided to vote for stuff that's like your old place. If you're coming from New York, you should vote against the opposite of everything that you voted for in New York should be your new mode of being. You should literally be, I can't vote for that. Voting no. Why? Because that's how it was. And what's proposed here is exactly how it was in New York. And that's why we moved. Anybody with any common sense, if you don't want to ruin the new place, that's what you'll do. So yeah, you've got that. And, it's good news to see San Diego County joining in, and it's good news to see the state of Texas leading the way on what to do with their border, and especially with the cooperation of the Trump administration. There is no better time than the present to get it done. And so now I want to pivot over to that story. I talked to you just a little bit about it in the first segment and why this is important. It will become patently clear to you as I share this story. And, I'm sure you've noticed we've done what is news on the program, but we've also interspersed that with, the fact that we have a daughter going to college this year. And so a lot of these college stories have become like, every year we get closer to this year, I have been paying more attention to what's going on in these campuses. And for younger women that I know who are currently still on college campuses, or they've just recently graduated from college, I've talked to them a little bit to try to figure out what is going on. And it is really disturbing. So this is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has agreed to bypass the Court of Appeals and immediately hear Professor John McAdams' case against Marquette University. McAdams sued Marquette after the university fired him for blogging about a graduate student instructor who mistreated her undergraduate pupil. So here's the scene. At Marquette University, they have a class where a graduate student is teaching undergraduate students, which is the norm at these larger universities. And she was teaching this class. And in the class, the students were talking about same-sex marriage. The name of the class was Theory of Ethics. And she said, the graduate student instructor, her name's Cheryl Abbate, Abbate, that she told the student, you can't express your disagreement with same-sex marriage in this class because doing so would be homophobic and offensive. And so the student was like, wow, really? This is ridiculous. So when McAdams heard about it, he has this blog that he does all these stories on about things that happened on Marquette because he works there. He's a professor there. So he shared the story on his blog. The blog is called Marquette Warrior. And he basically just shared the story as it occurred. So not a lot of conjecture, but just sharing what happened. Almost like he reported about it. So when Marquette University realized that he had shared the story, they didn't reach out to him for a conversation. They didn't ask him to take it down. They suspended him from his teaching duties, banned him from the campus. And that's hardcore. And then initiated proceedings to revoke his tenure and fire him. So he, of course, sued them. They convened an internal faculty hearing committee to judge the dispute, but there were serious procedural flaws within the committee because Marquette withheld evidence from McAdams and allowed a clearly biased professor to sit on the committee. So they didn't give him a fair shake when he went to appeal the process. So the committee, faculty hearing committee, eventually recommended that McAdams be suspended for 2 semesters. 2 semesters is a whole school year. For writing a blog post, he wouldn't get to teach or earn any money at the college for a whole year. Instead of doing that, Marquette President Michael Lovell suspended McAdams indefinitely without pay unless he would submit a written apology for writing the blog post. So in effect, they fired him because they knew he wasn't going to write the apology, because the whole point of him contending with them was that he had every right to share a story about what happened on campus, and he also had a right to, to hold the views that he held. So they feel, General Counsel feels that it's very important to have clarification on this important issue, and they're glad that John will have his day in court sooner rather than later. And I feel like, obviously this Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, they're going to hear the case, but there's also, if it goes badly for him, then it could theoretically go up to the Supreme Court of the United States, I guess. And I want it to go well for Mr. McAdams, because hopefully that'll be a precedent for other schools to let them know that this is not the kind of behavior that should be tolerated or promoted on college campuses. The law of the land used to be that I was a piece of property. Remember, not so long ago, our Supreme Court went against a guy named Dred Scott and told him he was property. So the idea that just because the Supreme Court says so, that means we all must change our morals to match, means I never would be sitting behind a microphone. I'd never be sitting in this neighborhood. I'd never be doing the things that I'm doing because I would still be someone's property, as my ancestors were. So that's my answer to people who say that abortion is settled law. Same-sex marriage is settled law. The Supreme Court has decided, so you don't have any right to hold a different view. Thank God that people who worked on behalf of abolitionist causes and really wanted to see true freedom in this country didn't listen to, well, it's settled law. Black people are property. Thank God they didn't listen to that. And someday in the future, I hope someone will be able to say of us, thank God we didn't accept abortion as settled law, and we fought it and were able to get it repealed as the law of the land and a constitutional right for women. So, that's the deal. That's the story. And what's funny to me is that you've got this story here about McAdams and how it's going to be heard. This case is going to be heard. But what exactly was so wrong about him telling what happened in the class? Because other people might read it and come to understand that that's the way they run their classes there at Marquette. His blog was called The Marquette Warrior. I didn't even check to see there it is, muwarrior.blogspot.com. I didn't even check to see. Okay. So he has updates on here. A lot of places have published stories about the case, and he says they're falsehoods. Interesting. And so there's a lot. He has a lot of information here that you can see. He's been blogging for a long time. It looks like a really long time, since 2006. 2002. He's been blogging since 2002 on this blog. So it's really, it's a weird story. Weird, like kind of crazy pants story about this whole thing. Okay. And so some of the things that have been alleged against him, just a little bit more background on the story, is that his his blog post caused the graduate student teacher, to have to leave Marquette because she received threats. Because according to them, the post included the student teacher's name, a link to her personal website, and her email address, and it led to a flood of hateful messages and threats. And he says she received no threats because she admitted that she had received no threats on her personal blog. And she moved to another university because the Marquette program ranked barely in the top 100 nationally, and the one at Colorado ranked in the top 40. So she went to a better program for her thesis. But why is anybody surprised that false information is being spread about this guy? No. We have an entire dossier written up by someone who wanted to get paid by a political campaign, now being treated as the word by media about President Trump. None of the dossier has been substantiated, yet people treat it as if it's the truth. So, people are going to people, I guess. When we get back, we'll have hour 2 of Stacey on the Right. And our next guest is going to be Curtis Houck, managing editor of MRC. So stay right there.
Hey, I'm Miki, co-host of Aaron the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. I want to invite you to be part of our online chat community we've affectionately called The Churban. While you listen to your favorite programs, you have the opportunity to communicate in real time with the hosts of those programs and other Urban Family listeners. Find out what the talk is all about. Become a Churbanite at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Tell the world about Urban Family Talk and help us spread the love of Jesus Christ. Right now, pledge $20 a month or more, and we'll send you an Urban Family Talk t-shirt. Help us help others to live out.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. San Diego joins the chorus of local California governments pushing back on the state's sanctuary policies. Jeff Manasso has more.
San Diego County votes to become the latest in a string of local governments throughout California to back the Trump administration's lawsuit against the state over its sanctuary laws that shield criminally illegal immigrants and block local and state police from cooperating with immigration officials.
One of the primary responsibilities of government is to keep the people safe.
Supervisor Diane Jacob voted for it, though the lone dissenting vote, Supervisor Greg Cox, says the board's move will create fear and divisiveness, waste taxpayer funds, and create distrust of law enforcement. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A passenger recounts the harrowing moments as the Southwest Airlines flight blows an engine, killing a passenger before it's diverted to Philadelphia. Gurnell Scott with that story.
As the airline and federal investigators search for why the engine failed, passenger Joe Marcus on Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum remembers that in the midst of the chaos,
I was just trying to, keep everyone calm in my section and just really, just listen to the instructions.
Marcus said others were focused on the badly injured passenger.
There was a few people kind of trying to attend there to the person.
Marcus complimented the 5-person crew for their actions in the face of tragedy. He says when the plane finally landed in Philly, he felt like he hit the lottery. Gurnell Scott, Fox News.
Are Americans sticking by Obamacare? The editorial board of a major newspaper believes so, and others not so much.
While acknowledging that enrollment is down from a 2016 peak, the Washington Post editorial board says 11.8 million people did sign up for coverage this year, and that's despite slashed funding for advertising and an open enrollment period that was shortened by half. The Washington Post goes on to say that most people on the Obamacare exchanges receive federal subsidies to help offset the cost of health insurance, and the average subsidized premium is only $89 a month. Hadley Heath Manning of the Independent Women's Forum does not think Americans are sticking by Obamacare.
Some people have left the so-called Affordable Care Act exchanges, and they've gone to find healthcare sharing ministries. They've gone to find direct primary care practices where they can pay directly for the healthcare they consume. And so these are other avenues that people are taking. Really, the enrollment figures under the Affordable Care Act have never lived up to the initial expectations. So I don't think it's a fair assertion to say that Americans are excited about it.
As for the $89 a month plans, Manning says the chances of finding a doctor are slim.
We know that the Affordable Care Act plans don't come with as robust network coverage. They aren't accepted by as many providers. And I would say, the majority of people who have new insurance coverage because of the Affordable Care Act were actually enrolled through Medicaid rather than through one of the private plans at $89 a month.
Regardless, Manning points out that people were told to enroll or face a tax penalty for going without health coverage of some sort. I'm Chris Woodward.
Former First Lady Barbara Bush is being remembered today following her death. Tanya J. Powers has more.
Tributes are coming in from around the world for former First Lady Barbara Bush, who passed away yesterday at age 92. She's being remembered as plain-spoken, compassionate, and funny. Author and First Lady's expert Andrew Oak says her greatest legacy may be that of the role of Bush family matriarch.
When times are tough and when the chips are down, she's the one that stands up and says, okay, come on, let's go.
Mrs. Bush will lie in repose Friday at St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston for members of the public who want to pay respects. The funeral, which is invitation only, is planned for Saturday. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
And finally, procrastinators have an extra day to file their taxes.
The IRS is giving taxpayers a one-day extension after the agency's direct pay website crashed yesterday. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin described the problem as a high-volume technical issue. The IRS has apologized for the inconvenience to taxpayers and says the crash is not believed to be a cyber attack. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible that says the heart of the fool inclines to the left just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. Help us to continue the ministry of Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk. Please call now with your pledge of support. Call 800-326-4543, option 2. Pledge $20 a month or more, and we'll send you an Urban Family Talk t-shirt. Then you can be a walking billboard to help others find our station and the love of Christ with Urban Family Talk. That number again, 800-326-4543, option 2. And thank you for listening to Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Okay, the second thing is that when you're calling on other countries to do more, to step up and do more, does that mean that you think the United States has done enough or has done all that it's going to do and it's now up to other people?
I'm not going to characterize that, Matt, in any way. I can just tell you the funds that Kylie asked me about are under review. As a general matter, we would like other countries to do more, and I don't have a problem with asking on behalf of American taxpayers for other countries to chip in too.
But do you believe that the people of Syria need to be protected from malicious attacks? And I'm asking this in the context of refugee admissions. Because since the beginning of the year, since October, as a fiscal year, since October 1st, the number of Syrian refugees in particular has dropped from about 6,000 to 44 from the same period, that October 1, 2016 to where are we now? April 2017. That's 99.2% decline. Why? And does the United States think that it's doing enough to assist Syrian refugees?
Well, this process is a little bit slower than it used to be because
99.2%.
Okay, let me. I'm answering your question. Am I not?
Wow, is he rude or what?
The process is a little bit slower because additional vetting mechanisms have been put in place. This was something that was initially done after 9/11. Where before refugees could come into the United States government started doing more to look into the backgrounds of individuals coming to the United States. That is always being refined and changed and updated.
Okay, welcome back to Stacy on the Right. So first of all, who are you listening to? It's reporter Matt Lee. In other bits of audio here on the show of Heather Nauert giving press conferences from the State Department, we have had this same kind of crazy, rude, highly interruption-based queries from Matt Lee. Now, I don't want to say he's a professional hater, but he kind of is. Like, he believes that the Trump administration hates refugees and that America, that we could never do enough. Like, if we filled every little corner, every little nook and cranny of America up with refugees from around the world, he would still be saying, but you still have room right next to you. You have room for one more refugee right next to you. And he's really proud of the fact that the town that he comes from is chock to the brimming with refugees, and that the entirety of the town, the atmosphere of it has changed because of that. So he goes on, and he keeps peppering her with questions, and she stands up to him a little bit. She's got a different demeanor than Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and I appreciate that. I think she, obviously she should be herself, and she does have a good command of the podium, and she is able to get control back from this particular reporter who is often an offender when it comes to proper decorum in that space. But she does explain some of the methodology behind the drop in refugee acceptance. And it makes a lot of sense. And he had to sit and listen to it, which I'm glad he had to sit there and listen to it. And it's worth us knowing, too, because there's a reason behind it. And so let's listen to her in number 5. Or, well, she in number 5, she talks about the administration's Syrian refugee stance, that many refugees would rather stay closer to home. She talks about the extreme vetting that's going on and how that slowed the process down. I don't know if we have that. Do we have that, Devin? Number 5.
I'd also like to remind you that even though we think the United States of America is the best place to live in the world, no offense to my foreign reporter friends in the back, but even though many Americans think that, there are many refugees around the country who don't want to be uprooted from their home country and be sent to, no offense to Buffalo, but to Buffalo, New York. Oh, right, your hometown, Matt.
Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned Buffalo because we do have a lot of refugees in Buffalo.
Yeah, I know, you certainly do. I know,
A
Matt,
lot.
and I'm from Wisconsin, and we do there as well, okay, and Minnesota and many other countries. But my point is that, and what was surprising to me when I first joined the State Department, in talking with many of my colleagues who work on refugee issues and have worked for Republican and Democrat administrations, they educated me on this, and they explained to me that many refugees would rather stay closer to home than get uprooted and go to Buffalo or Wisconsin, because they would like to, when it is safe to do so, and that is a really important component to it, when they can do it in a dignified fashion, they would prefer to go to their own homes, not the great old U.S. of A.
And this is something that has been presented on numerous occasions. We've talked about it here on the show. We talked about it. We've heard other people talk about it. First of all, if they're truly refugees, that means they're going back home. The next thing is that we as Americans don't even consider the fact that this isn't the best place for every person on the planet to end up. The way that we live here, our weather, our cultural norms, not the same as what people are used to. So yes, any person who is told you just don't have a choice, this is your new home, this is where you're going to be, you don't have the ability to go anywhere else, and this is where we're going to assist you in setting up your new life, then that's what they'll do. But if you ask refugees who are Syrian and they have their own, not just their own culture, but their own national identity, they're not Americans, they're not Syrian Americans, they're Syrians. And they had a beautiful, vibrant country until this civil war took off. Now, is Syria a place where I would want to go live? No. No, it is not. But I'm not Syrian. So if a group of Syrians want to stay closer to where they'll have the opportunity to go back home and rebuild and reconnect with their culture and maintain what is really, it's their family lines. Because what we've seen a lot of that's not reported here in this country is Middle Eastern families, when their children come here and they come here as refugees, the families do, The kids are really small and they go to American schools. They go to public school. And in the course of that, they are playing with and spending time with and going to clubs and everything else, the, after school clubs, different programs that schools have, the sports, the drama, all of that stuff, the theater programs. These kids grow up around other American kids. And then what happens is the girls end up dating and wanting to marry people who are not from their ethnic background. And for Muslims, that is verboten. And so instead of just telling the girls that you can't marry, there are honor killings that happen here in America. Now, the reason they're not widely reported on CNN and other major news outlets is because they know it makes refugees seem, and immigrants, it makes them seem barbarian to us. It makes it seem as if these people, they're not understanding the culture. They're not assimilating. And it's true. If you're killing your child for wanting to marry someone who's not from your home country, that's definitely a sign that you haven't assimilated. But it's also a sign that you do not want your offspring intermingling with the offspring of other ethnicities. You're trying to maintain your cultural heritage. So what's better, to have them come here because Matt Lee thinks it's a good idea and have the honor killings, or to leave them closer to their home country so they can go back there and start again and maintain their ethnic background? And so some of them will come here, and some of them will want to come here, and some of them will want to be a part of America, and they'll want to assimilate, and they'll want to open businesses and take advantage of the opportunities here, and others will not. But there is no blanket one-size-fits-all solution for this. And when I hear him talking like that, you know instantly where he's coming from. He doesn't care about Syrians. He doesn't care about refugees. He just wants to make the point that America can afford it and we should do it. And it doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter if other Americans don't want it. It doesn't matter if the people themselves don't want it. It doesn't matter if you ask them and they say they don't want to come to America. They're refugees. You put them on a ship, you get them to a plane, you get them over here and you put them in America, and they'll start loving it as soon as they get here. That's his attitude. And he sounds like an ignoramus, the way he's just hitting over and over again with the questions and everything, and not really, he doesn't seem like he's even slightly plugged in. But that's who he is. So I guess the sad part about it is that it's not just him. That's not just him that's who he is. That's the deal with this guy. So call lines are open. You can call in at 866-963-2037 if you want to join the program, 866-963-2037. So we have a couple minutes left in this segment. We have Mike Pompeo coming up next segment. We're going to listen to this audio of him getting grilled by Cory Booker about whether or not homosexual sex is a perversion. Now, you're probably thinking, well, Mike Pompeo's not up for, like, what does that have to do with his job description? Why would we care about that? Well, you might not care about it, but Cory Booker cares. Cory Booker has to make sure and embarrass Mike Pompeo on this subject, but Mike Pompeo didn't really seem embarrassed. When you're listening to it, you have to kind of listen to the tone of his voice to see if he's getting upset, and he's not. He's not upset at all. He's like, good to go. Look, I told you before. I'm going to tell you again. So it's good stuff. The reason I want you to hear it is because it's similar to what we heard from Bernie Sanders when he was screaming at another confirmation hearing about whether or not it was okay for someone to believe that their faith is the only way to God. And so Bernie Sanders obviously is of Jewish extraction, and Jewish people believe that the Messiah has not yet come. They also believe that if you're not ethnically Jewish, you ain't getting in there. They don't proselytize. So we don't prevent people of Jewish faith or background from serving in public life. So why would a Christian be prevented? Why would someone who's a Christian who believes that Jesus Christ is the only way to the Father be prevented from serving in public life when that's what Christians have believed since the dawn of time, since the dawn of this country? But this is what we're seeing from the liberals more and more often. And so my question to you is to kind of ponder and consider. It's a good question to ask other liberals is, If your political party is constantly hitting Christians on fundamental Christian beliefs and ripping into them for believing what the Bible says, it seems like they're against the practice of true Christianity, the traditional practice of Christianity, the biblically based practice of Christianity. So how can you as a Christian affiliate yourself with that? And it's not just one or two of them. This is happening over and over again in their writings, in the arguments and debates over what's in the platform and what isn't. Over and over and over again, it comes back to what they think other people should be allowed to believe, not have as behavior, not operate under at work, not work product, but just what people believe, what they pray, what they listen to when they're in the pulpit or in the pews listening to the pastor preach. This is what they're trying to get up into and prevent people from believing things that they don't like. And why is Cory Booker so interested in whether or not Mike Pompeo is okay with gay sex? Well, Cory Booker is gay. And so if you think you're going to hear him, you'll get to listen to him. If there's anything that would prevent him, in my opinion, from going out and running for the presidency, it's audio clips like the ones we're going to hear up next. I mean, once you've heard him ranting and raving about gay sex on this audio, how can you unhear it? How can you hear him talk about anything that he would lead nationally beyond where he is now with the attitude that he displays here? So we'll have that for you when we get back. The call lines will be open. You can weigh in as well if you'd like to. Call lines are 866-963-2037. Also, please join us. Share-a-thon. We want your pledges. We want you to come alongside, help us out here. 800-326-4543 or 800-FAMILIES, option 2. UrbanFamilyTalk.com is the website if you'd like to do it that way. Join us and pledge the $20 a month, and you get a free Urban Family Talk t-shirt out of the deal. So we'll be back with more right after this.
Okay, so the big question for any decision you're going to make, is this actually going to work? Well, if you've heard about MediShare, which is a brilliant way of sharing healthcare costs, you may have wondered that. Does it work? Well, so did Dr. Stuart Hoover, who initially joined to save a lot of money. The typical family saves about $500 a month. Stuart saved even more.
When we first joined MediShare, we were immediately going from a little over $1,600 a month down to $460 basically a month.
So that's wonderful, but then his wife needed emergency surgery, and the bills added up to $160,000.
So we were seeing the bills coming in, and then the bills were being paid. Portions were being shared, and the end result of this is this bill was taken care of.
Yes, MediShare works, and it's so easy to get your questions answered too, so why not? You can call right now. 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Dr. Tim Keller was on my radio program recently to talk about his new book, Making Sense of God, An Invitation to the Skeptical. In many ways, it was a prequel to his earlier apologetics book, The Reason for God, Belief in an Age of Skepticism. His earlier book, The Reason for God, deals with two large issues, doubt and the reasons for faith. For the skeptic, he attempts to answer the major questions that keep skeptics from biblical faith. These are questions about whether there can even be one true religion, and if God exists, how can a good God allow suffering in the world? He also tackles whether science has disproved Christianity. His new book, An Invitation to the Skeptical, starts at the beginning, since he has found that many might not even want to consider God, religion, and Christianity because it doesn't seem relevant enough to their lives. In a number of chapters, he begins to answer some important preliminary questions. For example, many skeptics feel that there is no need to believe in a God to have a full life of hope and meaning. They also believe that they can live their lives from any religious constraints, at least as long as they don't harm others. Moreover, they believe that they don't need God to have a basis for moral values and human rights. Tim Keller takes the time to point out the errors in those beliefs, often by showing that the person with a secular point of view also exercises faith. It isn't just the religious person who exercises faith. Everyone exercises faith. And after showing the failure of secularism and postmodernism, he concludes by showing that it is reasonable to believe in God. Both of these books address important theological and apologetic questions. I recommend both of them because they are great resources to put in the hands of your secular friends. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For more information about issues covered on Viewpoints, visit pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
You said in a speech that mourning an America that endorses perversion and calls it an alternative lifestyle, those are your words. Is being gay a perversion?
Senator, when I was a politician, I had a very clear view on whether it was appropriate for two same-sex persons to marry. I stand by that.
So you do not believe it's appropriate for two gay people to marry?
Senator, I continue to hold that view. It's the same view.
And so people in the State Department, I met some in Africa that are married under your leadership. You do not believe that that should be allowed?
Senator, I believe it's the case. We have married gay couples at the CIA. You should know I treated them with the exact same set of rights.
Do you believe that gay sex is a perversion? Yes or no?
Senator,
yes or no, sir. Do you believe that gay sex is a perversion? Because that's what you said here in one of your speeches. Yes or no? Do you believe gay sex is a perversion?
Senator, I'm going to give you the same answer I just gave you previously. My respect for every individual, regardless of their sexual orientation, is the same.
Wow. So he's just railing against him. Do you believe it's a perversion? Do you believe it's a perversion? So what if he did? What exactly does that stop Cory Booker from doing? Because that's what this is about. And we talked about this before on the program. Well, I don't know. I wrote a blog post on my blog some years ago, and I talked about how, trying to force people to accept homosexuality as a norm doesn't solve anything for the people who practice homosexuality, because what ends up happening is that person is looking for validation outside of themselves for something that goes against the temple of the Holy Spirit. It goes against themselves. They're sinning against themselves. They're sinning against God. And so no human validation will ever stop the persistent nagging, I'm sinning, I've sinned, I've done something wrong, I need to get right. Nothing will do that. And that's why you see the anger and the people rising up, and it's the vitriol. That's why you hear that sound coming out of Cory Booker's mouth. So he condemns him. He goes on to condemn Pompeo in the land of the free, home of the brave, the place where the First Amendment was created, the only place it exists on the planet in its current iteration, the way it is in our Constitution. Cory Booker, a member of the United States Senate, condemns Pompeo for holding the same views as Muslim nations. He goes on to quote that Muslim nations, people they have serving in Muslim nations are gay, and those people need his support, Pompeo's support, if he's to take on the role. What he doesn't say is that the Muslim nations believe the same thing that Pompeo does, that homosexuality is a sin. Now, in America, we don't harm people for sinning, but in Muslim nations they do. So who should Cory Booker be railing at? Pompeo or people in Muslim nations, nation states that actually stone gays, that toss them off the rooftops, that do all kinds of horrible things to them for doing something that is considered to be a sin in their faith? So it's number 7.
So I will conclude by saying,
if I'm confirmed,
I will conclude by saying, sir, you're going to be Secretary of State of the United States at a time that we have an increase in hate speech and hate actions against Jewish Americans, Muslim Americans, Indian Americans. Hate acts are on the increase in our nation. You're going to be representing this country and their values abroad in nations where gay individuals are under untold persecution, untold violence. Your views do matter. You're going to be dealing with Muslim states and on Muslim issues. And I do not necessarily concur that you are put forward the values of our nation when you believe that there are people in our country that are perverse, and where you think that you create different categories of Americans and their obligations when it comes to condemning violence. So I'll have another round, but thank you.
So he does actually, I have to correct myself, he does actually mention the violence and persecution that gays face in other nations that are Muslim. But what he's insinuating is that because Mike Pompeo thinks that gay sex is a perversion, that he would be a horrible person to work with those Muslim nations because he would condone that behavior. That is an insult of the highest order, obviously, because Mike Pompeo has never demonstrated that type of propensity. He's never been violent towards gays. He's never expressed a desire to be violent towards gays. He's never put forward any kind of a information base or any kind of a justification for that kind of behavior. And so with what does Cory Booker feel like he can come forward and make that assertion? I'm not sure, other than he doesn't want Mike Pompeo confirmed. So it's okay for Cory Booker to say this kind of stuff to Pompeo, but it's not okay if the shoe was on the other foot and Pompeo was the senator and he was saying, you believe in gay marriage. What reason should you get to head up an agency? Why should you get to be over people who aren't gay? I mean, can you imagine the backlash if someone who was gay was up for a confirmation and someone made their sex life an issue for the confirmation? If someone who was up for an appointment was asked about their personal beliefs and then told that they wouldn't be able to sit over people who weren't like themselves. Like, you have to wonder, what does Cory Booker think about people who are heterosexuals who believe in traditional marriage? He's a senator. Does he also represent them? They have to be some of them that exist within his district as a sitting United States senator. Remember, there are only 2 from each state. So he's got half of the state of New Jersey that falls under his purview. What about them? These arguments don't ever work out when you reverse them and put the accuser into the position of being the one who's being accused. Not for the Democrats. It just doesn't. He's wrong. So there's just no reason for anyone to feel like Mike Pompeo was hiding anything or that he backed off a little bit. He seemed pretty firm to me. And it's wrong for Cory Booker to present this in this manner, to kind of go at it this way. So I want to encourage you guys, moving on from this, to head over to StaceyOnTheRight.com and hit the subscribe button. And also, don't forget, the Share-a-thon's over tomorrow. So that's when we're pretty much done. Like, we will be done until later on in the year, because we do this twice a year, so every 6 months. And there's other news about Mike Pompeo coming out. And that is namely that Mike Pompeo actually met with Kim Jong-un's people. He had a meeting with actually Kim Jong-un himself back in the Easter weekend. So while we were all yucking it up and eating egg casseroles and quiches and stuff for Easter, he was in North Korea? Yeah. So I'm going to have to say I'm kind of surprised by that. Like, that is some under the radar action that they just did. So the Washington Post is reporting that the CIA director, Mike Pompeo, met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un over Easter. He met with him Easter weekend to lay the groundwork for a summit between Kim and President Trump. So this all came to light hours after Trump told reporters that the U.S. and North Korea were holding direct talks at extremely high levels in preparation for what was to be an extraordinary meeting following months of heated rhetoric over North Korea's weapons program. Now, what's so fascinating about this is that everyone said that the way that President Trump was talking about Kim Jong-un, calling him little fatty, talking about the way he looked, all that stuff, that it meant that President Trump wanted to go to nuclear war with North Korea and that he was irresponsible and that he was just like a demon of some sort. When in reality, it was him prodding and poking the situation in preparation for some kind of a drawdown. And also remember, between those comments on Twitter and verbal comments that the president made, and now he, in addition to meeting with other world leaders, President Trump has met on numerous occasions with Shinzo Abe, who's here now. And yesterday I mischaracterized him and said he was the leader of China. He's the leader of Japan. And then you have the leader of Japan, the actual leader of China, also meeting with President Trump. So you've got all these different meetings happening. And obviously we get the readouts. Like I get the readout in my email. They had a phone call and the readout is basically a summary of what they talked about. And you read through it. But you have to know that the more classified things are not included in the readout for the reporters. So there have been moving parts behind the scenes and the president has been orchestrating that. And he's going to get no credit for that. He's not going to get any credit from these people. In fact, this is all going on right now as everyone in the media is just talking to Jim Comey. So in all of the interviews, Jim Comey's being asked about, well, why did you talk about the president's, the way his face looked or the color of his skin? Why did you talk about what he didn't look as tall as you thought he would have? Why? Don't you think you've stooped? Don't you think you've demeaned yourself? He's like, no, I don't think I have. So going to Twitter, the president has actually tweeted, Mike Pompeo met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea last week. Meeting went very smoothly. A good relationship was formed. Details of summit are being worked out now. Denuclearization would be a great thing for the world, but also for North Korea. Also in the news is that it's been an announcement that North Korea and South Korea are talking for the first time of ending their war with each other. Just ending it. Now, I don't know if that would mean a relaxation in the border so that North Koreans and South Koreans who are family members could reunite for the first time. We don't know what that looks like, but wouldn't that be fantastic? So we don't know that that's going to happen. Right now, it's all still just talk, but isn't that fantastic? So they're not going to meet in the United States, obviously. And there are a number of locations, 5, according to President Trump, that are under consideration. And the president would not talk about the sites except to say that none of them were in America. So the president is also kind of keeping things close to his vest. He says, we'll either have a good meeting or we won't have a good meeting. Maybe we won't even have a meeting at all, depending on what's going on. But I think there's a great chance to solve a world problem. And so he might even get credit for like 3 minutes, and then the media will go back to talking about old sexual dalliances. So a little bit of history on it is that North Korea has long sought a peace treaty with the U.S. to formally end the 1950 to 1953 Korean War, but it's unusual for the North to seek to broach the issue directly with South Korea rather than with Washington. The armistice that ended the fighting was signed by the United Nations Command, U.S.-led forces in the conflict, North Korea and China. South Korea was a member of the UN Command, but was not a direct signatory. So Trump has said on Tuesday, which was today, that the two Koreas have his blessing to discuss the end of the war. And that would be, momentous. That would be an achievement for President Trump, brought about by this, dastardly language that he used that incensed so many in the media, and everybody was just losing their mind. And it turns out it worked out great. Turns out it was okay. So I want to head over to the Facebook page where we have the live stream going on. I want to give some shout outs to the people on the Facebook page, you guys. And also, of course, we're streaming to Periscope. We're streaming to, as the Periscope appears on my Twitter feed at Stacey on the Right. And then we have, of course, over here on Facebook on the Stacey on the Right show page. So a couple of people are asking whether or not there's Pompeo, who is currently the director of the CIA, that he's good enough to be the CIA director, but not Secretary of State. And that's an interesting point. It's Deborah making that point online. What's interesting about that is that he had bipartisan support. So Mike Pompeo, who believed the same things back when he was confirmed to the head of the CIA as he does now, he had bipartisan support. Lots of Republicans and Democrats voted for him to be confirmed to head up the CIA. And so now that he's going to go to the Secretary of State or State Department, Now, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, he's scary. He doesn't believe the right things about the social issues. We got to rip him down. I think that kind of grandstanding we saw from Cory Booker, he probably thinks he's getting all kinds of points. He probably is getting points for saying that with the hardcore leftists. But for the majority of Americans, parents with kids, families, even parents, people, voters who are moderate in their views, hear that kind of talk, and it makes you kind of wonder, what's this about? What does that have to do with running the State Department? Does he have a history of discriminating against people that he knows are in a same-sex marriage? Like, what exactly does that do for us, him having that conversation and talking to him like that? And so, it raises questions, and it raises questions about the fitness of Cory Booker as a senator. It raises questions about what is really the problem with Mike Pompeo. Is it that they don't think he can run the State Department? I'm pretty sure that's not it. It's that they don't want him running the State Department. They don't want to allow the president to switch people around and make moves because they know that those moves are being made to improve processes. And the Democrats' job right now is to put a stop to whatever the president is trying to do. If he's trying to go outside and see if it's sunny or overcast, they need to put a stop to that. If the president is trying to pick out a pair of shoes and he's trying to choose the ones that are most comfortable because he's going to be on his feet all day, they're against that. If he's thinking about eating McDonald's Big Mac instead of having a salad, they're against that. If he has a salad, they're against that too. If he's thinking about wearing a red tie for the third day in the row, they're against it. And then they're against everything he's trying to do legislatively. So there is nothing that President Trump can do. Even if he was to suddenly turn into a wild Democrat, they still wouldn't be for it because he was elected as a Republican. And as such, he's their enemy and he has to be taken down. Once we understand that, a lot more of what they're doing makes sense. And I also want to point out, just as a piece of information, that remember, the Democrats are willing, perfectly willing, to go to war with Russia, to initiate any kind of negative ramifications with the nation state of Russia, who has the largest nuclear arsenal outside of ours, just so they can delegitimize the election of President Trump because they can't admit that he beat Hillary the good old-fashioned way in the Electoral College. They just cannot let that stand. So let that soak into you for a minute. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Curtis Houck, managing editor of the Media Research Center. Stay right there. What's up, everybody? It's Tuesday, if my reckoning is correct, and that is, it's the truth. It's just all we can deal with. It's Tuesday, okay? And the reason I'm saying it like that is because of this weather. So it was so nice out earlier today. I actually went outside on our little back deck, and I sat back there, and the sun was kind of blazing down almost to the point where it was hot, like hot. But I sat there anyway because I felt like I hadn't gotten any, you need a certain amount of sunlight every day to activate vitamin D, and it's for your health. Like the sun actually makes us healthy. You don't want to get burned, but you want to sit in the sun at least a few minutes every day. And so I sat there and I soaked it up. And now, as I'm glancing out the window, I see it's overcast, and they talked about some kind of freezing temperatures tonight. And obviously we're in Missouri. So if you're further south than us, you'll know what I'm talking about. But suffice it to say, oh my gosh, my producer just texted me and said it's Wednesday. That's where I am right now. I have no idea what day it is. It's Wednesday. Okay. So it's Wednesday, and the weather is so interchangeable that I can't tell what day it is. That's where I am. Thank God we have a guest coming up next to help me out with my problem of space-time continuity. And that is Curtis Houck. He's a managing editor for Media Research Center. Curtis, thanks for coming on.
Hey, good afternoon. Great to be with you, Stacey.
I have no idea what day it is. I know where I am. I'm at home.
Neither do I. I mean, I'm with you totally half the time, too. It's just kind of, you wake up sometimes. It's that same feeling. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, what? Where am I sometimes,
But I'm on the air all over the place. And I'm talking about how it's Tuesday. And then Devin just texted me, and I glanced down and it says today is Wednesday. Thank God for producers and also others. There are people in the audience who are probably like, listen, it's not Tuesday, it's Wednesday. I'm back. I'm with you. So you're coming on today to talk about these P tapes, which is our PG reckoning of what this conversation is about. And I apologize to people in advance if this is something that you're finding, unacceptable. But the reason we're discussing it is because MRC tracks the Media Research Center. You guys track what the media talks about, how often, and when they have an inordinate focus on something that is ridiculous, you guys like to highlight it. And the point that I want to get to first is that these P tapes, quote unquote, are completely unsubstantiated, and they come from a source that is absolutely unreliable, namely a political campaign, the opposing political campaign paid for this dossier to be created. So the idea that we're talking about it like it's factual, like this actually happened, is a mechanism of the media where they just repeat something until we all just act like it's true. We don't even know if these things are true.
Exactly. I think that's really important to kind of delineate. And this is not the first time that the news media have been doing this. So really what we looked at, just to give people the basics, we're really looking at CNN, because CNN, they, more than any other news outlet, they portray themselves from the early morning shows to midnight when they go off the air for live programming as a neutral, facts-verse, above the fray, not MSNBC or Fox type or, channel. When that's not actually true. They're selling people a bill of goods that just is factually inaccurate. They are partisan from beginning to end, and their obsessions in terms of news judgment is becoming incredibly more and more salacious. They criticize the National Enquirer for kind of crazy UFO or Trump stories, rightfully so, but they themselves have kind of become kind of a joke tabloid kind of outlet. So what we did is we looked at, so basically the last few days from April 12th to the 16th, when basically the Comey Press book tour clips began coming out. And we found 77 separate occasions where they mentioned this P tape. And April 13th saw 48 mentions in one day. So that's an average of every 30 minutes. And again, there is nothing to prove the validity of any of this whatsoever. It comes out because James Comey talked about this and brought it up to Donald Trump when he was briefing him in Trump Tower. And the media have run with it just like they do with Stormy Daniels. CNN sent a crew to a strip club and graphically described what it was like there, because that's what they do, and they think this is interesting when it's not. It's poison. I don't even know how any other way to put it.
It is poison. And the reason it's poison is because every minute we spend discussing these tapes, and when I say we, I'm not talking about the dossier all the time on this show, but when you say 77 times over 5 days, that means that's wall-to-wall coverage about something that is completely unsubstantiated. And this is the same organization that couldn't devote more than a minute or two every 5 or 6 days to Benghazi, to the gun running scheme, Fast and Furious, to the debacle with the so quote unquote clean energy, you know, those businesses that were funded by the stimulus program, and then they went out of business. Like the people took the money and then the businesses just ceased to exist. None of those things have gotten this kind of coverage. And that's what I'm talking about from that back then. We're talking about back then when CNN, again, calls himself a news organization, and they never, ever gave this kind of credence to any other of the other subjects that were actually serious. People died in Benghazi. People died in the gun running scheme. And it was embarrassing to our country. And they just were like, yeah, that's not something we care about.
Well, and just to kind of bring things a little bit even closer to the present here, you know, everyone was wall-to-wall Friday night with the Syria strikes. That story has basically dropped off the map. I don't have a number for you, but I watch CNN at my desk every single day, and it has just been relegated to a few passing mentions here and there. The reason is because, and you're like saying people died there. People were gassed to death. You know, some horrible images. It's, you know, it's just so disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, because it doesn't involve a P-tape, it doesn't involve Stormy Daniels, it's not interesting, you know, because Donald Trump, it doesn't involve Donald Trump. It doesn't involve, you know, he's not the character, main feature in this story, just like Benghazi and Fast and Furious. Donald Trump and conservatives were not the main kind of who and the who, what, where, when, why. So that's why the media aren't covering it, because they're not interested in that. And they think this is a news model for them. But, you know, again, I think it's just, you don't even know it's a propaganda. It's more like a grocery store tabloid, the very kind that they're not interested in. And the same goes for the Sean Hannity situation. They can't help themselves but be obsessed with this while lecturing others about what's news and what's not. And that is just so disingenuous, and it's really irresponsible at this point.
Well, it is. And I love how you brought those more current stories that they're not reporting on. This is a continual problem for them. They don't have any credibility because they from then to now, they've not improved at all. In fact, they've gotten worse. But I think when you talk about the gassing in Syria, and when you mentioned the children dying and all of that, and then the response from President Trump was to kind of deflect and distract publicly, but behind the scenes, they got together with our allies and they put together a strike, and they went in with about a third of what the military wanted to use, and they still were able to do serious damage. That is a story too. Like that for President Trump, who on the campaign trail, he said he wasn't going to be doing that kind of stuff. But when he realized what was going on there, he had to act. He took advice from leadership and he went in, but not alone. He went in with our allies. That's a story that's worth telling as well. And I know that they hate him, but they should still tell it.
I think that undercuts the point that a number of people in the news media like Rachel Maddow made and Chris Matthews have made over the last, the week or so leading up to the strikes, which was if we would hit back, it would be a distraction from Stormy Daniels, it would be a distraction from the P-tape, it would be a distraction from Jim Comey. But the reality is President Trump behind the scenes gathered up, our closest allies, the British and the French, and we did this together. They launched, airstrikes too. They didn't just say, yeah, I support this. They went out and got their hands dirty, and their, finest men and women joined ours in carrying out this mission as well. So, and that is another point to that story about how the news media, they want one thing to be true, desperately want one thing to be true, and it's not the case. So what do they do now? If they can't, convince people of something, they just don't cover it anymore. And I think that's what's really important for people to understand, that sometimes the worst bias is the bias of the news that's not covered. It's the bias that you don't see, to explain to people, as opposed to something that they may say on the air. And the P-tape is bad and all these other things, but what's not being covered instead of the P-tape is, I think, really what shows the media's character.
Yeah, I think there's also you just basically, you kind of unpacked it and created a direct line between they want to talk about the P tape. They don't want to talk about Syria and the response that is really, it's similar to what President Obama did. So they should support it. Technically, on its face, they should support it because they supported it when President Obama did it. And he did so much more, 26,000 bombs. But they're not supporting it because even if it was a wag the dog situation where it's a distraction, they're determined not to let that happen. But because it clearly isn't a wag the dog situation, because I don't know about you, Chris, but I don't know anybody who's interested in the P tape or Stormy Daniels. Like every person I know, and I look all over, no one cares. Like it happened a long time ago. It is really unfortunate for their marriage. But it's not something that people care about. And I think that's sad, but it's the truth because I don't care about it. And I've really been thinking about like, I would have cared about this like 10 years ago. I would have been like, wow, but I don't care.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing goes for the Jim Comey book tour. It's what a lot of journalists are interested in. It's the same thing with SNL. Journalists are salivating over the latest anti-Trump sketch on SNL. But most people, normal people, don't care. What people do care about, since we're talking here with the Christian audience, these are children, men and women of God who, were gassed to death. An atrocity, a horror was carried out against them. I think normal people care about responding to evil than, someone's horrible indiscretion a number of years ago. I think on the whole, I think that's something that people are really interested in and doing something for, for these poor people. But the news media, they don't have those same values. It just doesn't register in their minds, I think. They don't sit around the meeting saying how we can screw Trump. I think consciously most of the time the news media certain issues just do not register in their minds as things that are important.
I would go a step further, Curtis. I would. I'm sorry, but I'd go a step further than that and say that these people are so out of touch with what regular Americans like. When you just said, so you see the imagery of the people who've been gassed and you're like, oh, I wish I could do something about that. That is something that's like it's a natural reaction that you can't even control. You want to do something. And then you see a few days go by and you think, well, I guess we're not going to do anything. And then the president comes out with, it's France, it's Britain, it's us, we're going in hard. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, because I really want to do something about this. And then when they talk about the other stuff, the personal indiscretions, it's kind of like, man, that's a shame. But like, what does that have to do with, that's the feeling that we have now. And we learned that from the Democrats because that was their attitude about Bill Clinton when he was in office doing these kinds of things. So I'm really grateful that Media Research Center does this work. And Curtis, I appreciate your team, all of what you guys do in tracking the media and keeping us aware of how biased they are, not just against the president, it's really against just good, regular people. And so it's mrc.org is the website for you guys. And you also have Newsbusters, newsbusters.org. That's another one of your sites. Curtis Houck, managing editor for MRC. Thank you for your time today, sir.
Yeah, no problem, Stacey. We really appreciate everyone's support, and it really allows us to keep doing what we're doing. So we watch the news so you don't have to. It's very simple, but it's true.
We appreciate that. All right, thanks, and we'll talk to you again soon.
No problem. Take care.
All right, you too. So we're up against the end of the program, and I want to say thank you to people who called in or went to urbanfamilytalk.com and donated to us during the Share-a-thon. Tomorrow's the last day. I'm going to ask you to seriously, join us. Help us out by doing the monthly pledge. And let's say you're thinking about it, you're like, I'm paying $7.99 for my, my CRTV, or I'm paying $9.99 for my Netflix. Why should I pay $20? Okay. So $7.99 a month it is. We'll take it. So please consider what you'd like to pledge for the month on a monthly basis, and head over to urbanfamilytalk.com. And the button is at the very top. You just click on it and you walk through the process. It's so quick and easy. We also have the phone number that you can call, 800-326-4543 or 800-FAMILIES, option 2. And we have so many cool things that are coming up on the horizon with Urban Family. And I want you guys to be as excited about it as I am. It is such a privilege to be here. And not just here, but that SOTR is also on AFR. So we're on American Family Radio. That is a total privilege. That is a blessing from God, and I'm grateful for it, even though I don't know what day it is. Like, seriously, that's why I have a producer, I guess. So thank you for being with us today. God bless you. Head over to StaceyOnTheRight.com. Check it out. Hit the subscribe button over there if you want. And don't forget the number. It's 800 Families, option 2. Thank you for being here. We'll be back with you tomorrow, which, according to my producer, that'll be Thursday. Have a great night.